when I first started on YouTube. I was actually making videos since I was 10. Back in the day, I was actually looking at some of the people I watched. It included Mac Barbie '07. It wasn't vlogs, but it was a lot of makeup stuff, and they would also document other parts of their life. And then YouTube went into this really high production time of the platform, and I wasn't really capable of doing stuff like that. So I was kind of discouraged. And then when I first saw vlogging again, I realized there's a market and, an audience for people that wanted to see a slice of life. That really attracted me to vlogging.
You said something really interesting, like about brands. So, how does it affect collaborating with brands?
Trying to think of how it fits into the things I already do in my vlogs, and the audience knows if it doesn't fit authentically. So that's something that I really try to think about, is how can it naturally be integrated versus trying to create this whole other narrative. First, prioritize, I think, getting really good at what I do. I don't remember who said this, but it's about being so good they can't ignore you. And there's a balance between the business and the art of content, and I'm still working on trying to figure that out. But I know that if my content continues to improve, then I will continue to get more opportunities.
You're very transparent with sharing information about your earnings on YouTube. But would you like to tell us now, like how much you're making through AdSense on YouTube and brand collaborations? Do you like to give some context? Hi, this is Shubham Tiwari, and I welcome you to the Fireside Chats. Today we have with us a lifestyle vlogger from Canada. From self-development to unmissable experiences to weekend vlogs, our today's guest likes to document everything in her unhurried style. She's pretty transparent with her earnings on YouTube, which is one of the key areas we highlight on this show. I'm talking about none other than Celine. Celine, welcome to the Thousand Faces Club.
Thank you for having me. Excited to dive into all those topics that you just shared. Yeah.
Great. So, Celine, clearly, you are a vlogger who knows, who's very natural at it, right? So what inspired you to, start vlogging? How did you find it? And, how has your inspiration evolved over the time?
Yeah. So as of now, I've classified myself as a vlogger, and you alluded to how things have changed over time. So going back a bit to when I first started on YouTube, I was actually making videos since I was 10. And
Wow.
that was, yeah, back in the day, I was actually looking at some of the people I watched. It included Mac Barbie '07 was someone that if you were watching YouTube at that time, you might know as a female. And it wasn't vlogs, but it was a lot of like makeup stuff, and they would also document other parts of their life. And then YouTube went into this, I think, really high production time of the platform, and I wasn't really capable of doing stuff like that. So I was kind of discouraged, didn't do much on YouTube for several years. And then when I first saw vlogging again, I can't remember exactly who I had found and watched, but I realized there's a market and, an audience for people that wanted to see a slice of life. And that was something that I could definitely share. And oftentimes, even when I was younger and I watched YouTube, it was because I wanted to find people that I could resonate with, and might not have people in my own personal life to share some of those experiences with. So that really attracted me to vlogging, and things you'd mentioned in my little intro with regards to the transparency aspect and having that personal connection were some of my favorite things when I watched other people's vlogs, and I felt it was something I could emulate myself.
Right. Wonderful. Looking back at your journey on YouTube, what are the biggest shifts you have observed on this platform, and how have you evolved to adapt to those challenges?
Yeah, I think, in terms of the style of content, I mentioned briefly with definitely having this phase of very high production content being the focus of what people seem to gravitate towards. I think there is still a lot of great channels that have, teams and everything behind them. But now there's also such a market for people that want to just see more day to day or considerably lo-fi productions.
Yeah.
If you think of even like Emma Chamberlain coming back to YouTube, and her content has such a distinct style, but it's like very much on her camcorder, and that has, I think, shifted people's perspective on what it takes to make a good video. If there's still other very important aspects, like storytelling has never been more important, I think. With that said, I know there's a lot of shifts with short form being very important, and
Yeah.
obviously influenced by things like TikTok. And that's given this other space on the platform for people that might want to focus on that. So for me now, I'm trying to think of balancing what my content mix looks like. And that's going to come, I think, no matter what platform you're on. But YouTube in particular offers so many different ways that you can share content. So it's great. And it can also be a lot if you're still trying to figure out what that optimal mix is.
Yeah. Your most popular long form video on YouTube is about the earning on YouTube. So
Yes.
we'll come to that later on. Before that, you said something really interesting. I mean, you started very early on YouTube, but you took a break from YouTube, then you came
Mm-hmm.
back. So, looking back, what advice would you give to your younger self about navigating the early years of YouTube? Do you think that break, would you take that break again if you were to do it again?
I often look back and wish I never left because that, and when I say I started, I haven't really shared that much of it, and I will one day on my channel, but I was uploading at least once a week for a while, and there were videos that I'd made that had over 100,000 views um,
Wow.
when I was that young. So it arguably might have been easier at that point, but to that point exactly, it's given me a lot of, you know, buyer's remorse in not continuing, because lots of people that started that early could have continued to grow. And um, that said, I don't think I would make the type of content that I do now necessarily,
True.
because I was doing a lot of different things that aren't reflective of where I am with my content at this point. So my advice would have been probably to stick it out a bit longer, but you can't regret the decisions you make. So I'm happy with where I am now. Yeah,
Right.
it is. It was
So
an
your
opportunity.
of course. And so your earlier channel was, it was a different channel, I take it? Or
Yeah, I did. Well, actually, the channel that I have now itself was an arts and crafts channel.
okay.
And then before that, I had a channel that was, I did Photoshop tutorials at one point, and then those videos also had done pretty well when it was years ago. So the quality was not something I'd be proud of today, but they showed me the potential of people watching videos when it got such high views, like as a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And then this channel that I've repurposed was around arts and crafts.
I mean, everyone's, earlier content is a bit cringe when we look back.
Yeah.
So nothing to worry on that front. Like you do vlogging nowadays, you call yourself a vlogger, you just mentioned. How do you
Hmm.
think vlogging can be strategically used for building, let's say, first of all, a personal brand?
I think compared to, other formats of videos, there's an easier way to show some relatability. And also, I personally like to bring the audience along through all different areas of my life. So that can, I mean, you need to be authentic, I think, to resonate with people. So that itself lends uh, a lot of, uh, lends itself well to be able to help build your personal brand. And I think it shows consistency as well in like what people can expect from, maybe your personality. And that is important if you want to establish what you stand for, and then eventually continue to work with, companies as well, which I think we'll talk a bit more
Yeah.
about later. But like all those things show through as you're vlogging, or they should. And it took me a while to get to that point where I think I'm able to be myself, but that is what creates distinction in your vlog versus others.
Right. So clearly, you forge better connections with your audience by being yourself. And
Hmm.
of course, it builds your personal brand. But you said something really interesting, like about brands. So how does it affect, collaborating with brands?
Yeah. So within the collaborations I've done so far, it is trying to think of how it fits into the things I already do in my vlogs. And the audience knows if it doesn't fit authentically. So that's something that I really try to think about is how can it naturally be integrated versus trying to create this whole other narrative or this other, storyline in my life because my vlogs are my life. They're a
Yeah.
section of it and it is still curated parts of it, but it has to reflect things that I am already doing. And if it's a brand that I'm considering to work with, then I want to really think of how that can fit into the picture based on what I already have shared and people already recognize from my vlogs.
Yeah. And you said something really interesting, like it's a you can't put up an act when you're, I
No.
mean, you didn't say it, of course, I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
So you can't put up an act while you're vlogging, right? Because I mean, looking at the frequency with which you post on your YouTube, it's fairly, good. I mean, you post like every third or fourth day, if I'm not wrong.
As of now, I've been experimenting with twice a week. Um,
Oh yeah. So you are
yeah,
clearly
yeah.
posting, yeah, at a good rate. So of course you have to be authentic there, and it's a very saturated space. There are other bloggers as well. So what are your thoughts on the current landscape? And do you see it becoming more saturated, or new forms are evolving there? You can tell us.
I I do agree it is saturated. I think you've seen people that or even younger generations at a
Yeah.
larger scale now, looking at people that make videos as something that's aspirational that they want to do. And also because there's this association with YouTube and content as a means to create a business for yourself. So that's very appealing and that creates more saturation, I think. That said, I don't know the exact statistics on this, but when we look at how many accounts there are on YouTube, there is still only a certain percentage that reach the threshold for partner or a certain threshold that will eventually get to certain amounts of subscribers. So um, even with more people doing certain things on YouTube and making videos, I think people will actually, let me say, I think the criteria for what people want in videos will continue to evolve, but not everyone might be able to evolve with that. So if you are persistent and you can continue to work on adapting to the changing trends and what people value in the content that they seek in vlogs as well, then I think there's still opportunities just as much as there were before to grow. And I've also still experienced, even though I took that long break, that I can still grow. So I don't want that to ever deter people as I also speak about tips and my content journey if they're or if they're interested in trying to make videos themselves. And everyone can bring a new perspective, especially through vlogs, that I think makes vlogging a great way to get into the YouTube and making videos. It could naturally progress into like other areas though. I know people start with vlogs and then they end up finding something more specific that they'd rather do, but that's where I started was like just documenting whatever. And then now I've figured out some of my pillars from that because I used vlogging as a means to get myself into um, this space of thinking of how to communicate on camera and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, just the other day I was going through a vlog by comedian Andrew Schulz. He's on
Oh,
tour
yeah.
right now in Australia, and he
Yeah.
uses vlogs in a very interesting way, because he's not, of course, not going to show the entire stand up on his YouTube channel, because he might have a deal with, let's say, Netflix or something like that.
Yeah.
But he uses vlogs to generate interest about his tour. So of course, clearly it can be used in different ways to market something that you're doing. So yeah, I mean, we can see newer ways of vlogging coming out, as you said. So you spoke about the break again. So let's jump to monetization and brand collaborations. You broke away from the grind of 9 to 5 to find yourself a rhythm and rediscover life. Let's put it in a very poetic way.
Yeah.
Uh, so how does YouTube fit into your dream life? What are your long term monetization goals for your channel, and how do you plan to achieve them?
Yeah. So, in that poetic way, I think is what I've told myself in my head. And at that point, when I decided to take this break that I'm on,
Yeah,
my channel was starting to kind of peak, and then that it did peak with a couple of videos that performed outperformed anything else on my channel now. But that was honestly just timing. So it reinforced for me though the potential that my channel might have. Not to say that every video is gonna outperform the last one, but based on where my head was at with giving myself some time to rediscover life, as you put it, finding my passions was a big part. And up until that point, I was, making a little bit from YouTube, but it wasn't anything that I found would be a signal that I could potentially do this as like a career one day.
yeah,
I don't necessarily feel that I'm at that point yet either, but it was a signal that was reaffirming, and it gave me just that little push to use this time to really see what I can do with my channel and give myself, the grace to try new formats and try new things. And um, that's why now I'm uploading 2 videos a week, which I wouldn't have been able to do if I had a 9 to 5 right now.
of course.
And long term for monetization, I think I'd love to first prioritize, I think, getting really good at what I do, which isn't monetization related, but I've reflected on, what my 2024 goals are. And I believe, I think, I don't remember who said this, but it's about being so good they can't ignore you.
Oh
And,
yeah,
and I think monetization is very necessary to make this a career and to sustain a life with the earnings from YouTube. And I
yeah,
think there's a balance between the business and the art of content. And I'm still working on trying to figure that out. But I know that if my content continues to improve, then I will continue to get more opportunities for things like brand collaborations or potentially finding um, a stronger connection with my audience to feel confident to release a product, which is something that I'd love to do in the future. And
right.
AdSense will continue to increase as I gain more traction on my channel. So that's a big thing that I want to focus on in 2024.
Yeah,
But I mentioned a few of the things that I would love to continue working on in terms of actual, channels or sources of revenue.
yeah,
Diversification, I think, is a big priority as well as I continue working on my channel.
right. And what kind of brands have you been working with so far?
It's been a mix. I've had a lot of outreach with brands that are more in the content development or production space because I do speak about content and my journey and tips for YouTube. So I've had a lot of inquiries from those types of companies, as well as a mix of more lifestyle brands, which I think is great. And I love to make sure that it's a balance as I continue considering collaborations. So fashion would be included, as well as like more health and fitness related as
Right,
well.
right. And for a brand manager who might be looking at this interview, how do you evaluate potential brand collaborations to ensure that they align with your values and content identity? What would you like to say to them?
I would say it's important to really understand the creator that you're trying to work with. So having a strong understanding of, what they typically focus on within their content and the values that they share on their platform. Having a good understanding of like what people are saying within their comments as well is a really strong indicator of what people might be looking for. Like if I was a fashion brand, for example, and I would see, because I do get questions of where is your clothing from, and certain brands that might be competing with that brand, might want to look at that as a signal to say, okay, there's clearly an interest from their audience. That's even without looking at the demographics and stuff like that, which should be considered as well. And then having a good understanding of what that creator's style of content might be as you get into working with a creator. I think it's really important to respect and give that freedom to a certain extent so that it's not coming across as just a sales pitch.
Yeah,
So, definitely some of the key things that I would make sure that a brand manager would consider before starting anything.
right. Another question from brand manager's perspective: what potential challenges do you see in working with the brand?
A couple, let me think. So, obviously, the creative freedom aspect that I'd mentioned is important. And I think there's having a brief, but then also being able to take that brief and make it into your own thing. Um, I think communication is really important as well. So just being transparent upfront of what the expectations are. Oftentimes, maybe feedback or things like terms that are misunderstood can be avoided if there's more transparency and clear communication up front. Um, and that's ultimately, I think, what leads to having a stronger relationship and then potentially being able to work with them again.
Yeah. And I'll add just one more point to it. Like long term relations are more important in brand collaborations, just like everything in life.
Yeah.
So that's one really important thing there. Now, speaking from creators' perspective, what are some of the biggest red flags in a brand collaboration?
Um, Not being clear on what the expectations are. And usually, I mean, it's taken a bit of time to see that certain vagueness within emails might be intentional, or I assume it is because then things come up later on. So for me, if it's not super clear, then I will try to probe for more details. And that's sometimes an indication that, they will bring things up later. And just to avoid that, I will try to just get that clarification up front. Um, Also being a bit too, I don't know how to phrase this, but prescriptive on what
Okay.
the messaging or what the deliverable should look like. Again, it goes back to showing up authentically. And um, I think brand managers that have a good understanding of how the content space works and how the platform works, especially because it could vary from different platforms, they are the ones that are usually more understanding of like, okay, this is how this person and this creator brings it to life versus another, versus everyone reading off the same script.
Right. And you know what? You're right, Celine. I mean, people coming from the brand side into the creator economy, they're not really well versed with how to, gauge a creator's potential or how to, just like meet them at a wavelength. You mentioned like
Hmm.
even, how you structure a sentence, right? The language can be instructive or constructive. So these things also matter. So yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. Uh, have you found your, dream collab yet? And if you have not, then what does it look like?
I haven't yet. And my idea of a dream collab would be a full, I think, integration of a product and my own like perspective on it. So ideally, my dream would be a product that we can create together with a company. Um, that would be extremely cool. I don't exactly have a brand or an idea of what that product would be in mind, but that would be up there on top, like at the very top of my list of things at some point that I'd love to do.
Yeah. Great. Moving on to your podcast strategy now. You have a podcast. Please tell us, how does it, go with your YouTube strategy? How does it fit into your overall content creation?
So I decided to create a podcast because I felt it'd be a medium that I can dive deeper on some of the topics that I already discussed within my vlogs. And you'd mentioned self improvement, so that is a pillar of mine, and I really like to share as openly as I can with my experience on certain things, including mental health. And while I've received a lot of good feedback when I mention these things in my vlogs, it's just not a format that I think lends itself well to the type of, points that I want to hit on. So I wanted this to really just be like an extension of my brand that I've already created, but something that's less about my, me in a way. It's not about the editing, it's not about like all this other stuff that I include in my videos, which is what makes my videos mine and my own style, but then still having the conversations or me talking, because it's not a two person type of thing, but having me talk about the things that have resonated with people. So I can spend more time to dig in on some of the topics. And um, yeah, I think there's been an appetite for that from my audience, but it just needed its own place to live outside of my videos.
Right. Do you have any demographic analysis of your audience? How many people are there in the West and the rest of the world? Can you give us an overview?
Um, to be honest, I haven't been looking a lot at my demographics, and the reason why is I wanted this is very much in the learning phase for me.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I wanted to give myself the chance to not get bogged down by the analytics or to freak out about things like that, because that's easy enough to do on YouTube.
Right.
Um, at a point, I think I will pay a bit more attention to that. I think the last time I checked, it was a lot of US and Canada.
Yeah.
But then surprisingly, like maybe 1% here and there within other countries, which aligns with my audience that I see on YouTube as well.
Great. Speaking of social media platforms, you have your presence on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, uh, and like how are you prioritizing these platforms? Which one is your core focus? Are you going to at all going to focus on just one? Uh, like what's the strategy there?
So I am only active on YouTube and Instagram, really, but over the last little while, I've started to focus most, as in like 90% of my efforts towards YouTube. Um, for Instagram, I think I want it to eventually be more of just like a place to share in the moment and day to day type of things. But I feel like going back to me thinking about growing my content and improving it, that's where I see most of my efforts going. And I would say YouTube is the strongest in terms of community engagement and just like audience overall at this point. So I do find people, going to my Instagram and commenting and stuff that they're from YouTube, and that's great. Um, but not something that I'm like thinking of a strategy for in terms of my
Yeah.
content. It's just kind of in the moment, which I'll probably keep it that way. And then now with my podcast included, I think that's more like the division of YouTube as the top priority, and then trying to just continue to post my episodes on Spotify and Apple Music.
It's really interesting you mentioned that people are coming to your Instagram through YouTube. So
Hmm.
clearly your community is let's say very loyal. You're developing a very loyal community, which is taking the pains of going to other social media platform to find you. That's amazing. So can you share some examples of how you have fostered a strong community around your channel? What platforms or strategies have you been most effective for you?
A big thing I think that's helped me develop these, stronger relationships with my audience is the comments on my videos.
Yeah,
I
I
do
looked at them.
spend
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So I do spend dedicated time to go through them, and I've had feedback to say like they appreciate that I do that. Um, and I've heard multiple people say, and I'll say it as well, like if you make videos and people are commenting, engage, do something. So as much as I can, I'll be in there. And I've seen people repeatedly coming back or like, just things like that. I think it shows that it's a two-way conversation, which is what I want my content to be. So, in the ways that people can communicate, it's usually the comments. So, that's where I'll be able to engage with them. And I think that just builds like a stronger relationship over time. Um, in terms of like the community tab, I do try to keep, some updates there. And there's pretty strong engagement from like the posts that I do make. And I think that also shows like more of that behind the scenes of things. And it creates another dimension apart from just you watching a video of mine. I'm also sharing things as they come up. And that's kind of what I had been using Instagram for. And I will continue to, but just trying to figure out like what the right formats would be for Instagram as well. And to your point, people that already are going to Instagram, I think it's pretty cool because it shows like they want to continue to keep in touch with me. So I think having multiple platforms is a great mix for most people because of that, is having like additional touch points to strengthen your community and to keep in touch and share your updates with your audience.
Yeah, I mean, you clearly have a very involved audience. They love your content, your style, everything, because that's exactly why they're following you, from platform to platform. So, and you're right. I mean, I've seen, on community tabs of channels which have millions of subscribers, they hardly get 100 likes on a post, right? But yours, on the other hand, the ratio is amazing. I mean, it's very healthy. People are, I'm clearly you don't have many, bots going on there, because your people are clearly voicing their opinion, and the opinion is very
Yeah.
clear that they like your content. So we hope that you continue to grow like this in 2024 and beyond as well, of course. So looking forward, Celine, what is your outlook of YouTube and the overall creator economy in 2024?
Yeah, I think from my own plans in 2024 and that perspective, it's really just trying to focus on continuing to improve. I mentioned briefly around like the mix of content and also across different platforms, trying to get that nailed down. Um, I'm in a space, I think, where I still have opportunities to experiment and trying to like give myself time to try new things. And I'm going to really use this year, I think, to do just that while having the consistency of what people already see on my content. It's nothing drastic, but things like trying different, types of videos. I just did something recently that I'm going to share. It's like waking up every day at 6 a.m. That's not something that I've done yet, but like things like that, giving myself a chance to do that. Um, I think where I'm at right now is I could potentially just keep doing the same thing that I'm doing, but I look at YouTube very much as a source of, a creative outlet, and that wouldn't fulfill that need in me as much. So letting myself be creative, letting myself try those things while still having fun. And I truly believe if people are doing that and working to improve, then you can grow. So that's my focus for the year. And I think there's so many other things like that we didn't touch on that are going to come in the creator economy, AI evolving, how that competes with us, all these other things. But um, I'm focusing on what I can do within my lane, and that's my priority for the year.
Great. Celine, we make our guests go through certain rituals at the end of the interviews. So, since you have a very, involved audience, I would like you to, give a message to your audience, to your subscribers who are already there. Because oftentimes, when you're a creator, you're thinking of growing, going to new people, but it's about the people you already have, right?
Yeah.
So, any message for them?
My message is thank you all so much for everything in 2023 and for always showing up for allowing me to be myself, for accepting me as myself, and just the continued support. I wouldn't be able to do any of the cool things that I've been able to this past year without you guys. And um, yeah, thank you for coming along on the ride. And here's to amazing content in 2024, I hope, and more opportunities to just show up for you guys, which is why I do this.
Wonderful. Last question. Would you like to nominate anyone for our show?
Oh, um, I will have to get back to you on this because I don't want to be in trouble to put anyone on the spot.
I mean, thank you so much, Celine, for whatever you're doing. Your content is empowering a lot of people. It's inspiring the way you're very transparent. We hope you continue to evolve, grow, and continue to get all the love that you're getting from the people. Thanks again. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And I wish this podcast all the success as well in the next year. So thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor.
And please tell us, what did you think of this episode. Please go to Celine's YouTube channel, follow her on Instagram, find her, and yeah, continue to watch what we are producing here. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
And cut. That's it for today's episode, guys. If you really liked it, please subscribe to the Thousand Faces Club and press the bell icon below so that you don't miss any videos from us. Thank you.